When the IELTS speaking examiner is listening to your answers, they check if you demonstrate flexible use of spoken discourse markers, probably known to you as linking words or connectors. In this video, I'm gonna give you perfect linking words for each situation so you can speak confidently. Show the difference between speaking and writing connectors to make sure you use words that sound natural. We'll look into each part of the test and you'll get a full slide with all the new words we learn to save for future use. It's Ase here. Let's get started. Part 1 questions are simple and answers are quite short. I'd say 2 or 3 sentences each. Here we need to connect ideas in a simple and natural way. Let's look at one question and how we can refer to different periods of time. The question is, what work plans do you have for the future? Right now, my goal is to do a master's. After that, my dream sooner or later is to set up my own consultancy business. But that might take a long time. Very simply here. Talking about the present, it's right now and at the moment. And in the future, after that and then. In writing, we could make that more formal. How about at present and once I complete my master's? And for the past, we could say before that, or more formally in writing, previously. Now then, it doesn't mean that linking words in writing and speaking are completely different. But sometimes, if we use very formal linkers or connectors when we speak, it doesn't sound natural. Now, let's look at adding ideas and a question from the where you live option. Have you met many neighbors from your area? No, I haven't, because I've only been living here for a few months. And not only that, I'm also very busy at work. The reply starts with a because, which we very often use in IELTS speaking. And then we give 2 reasons why. And we connect these 2 reasons with the linker. And not only that. In writing, that can become complex. Maybe, not only have I moved in recently, but I also work long hours. So this is not only but also construction. Or we could use formal furthermore or moreover. And if we're giving a formal presentation or speech, it's fine to use these same linking words. But in our context, it's better to add the new point by saying not only that or not just that, what's more, another thing, or as well as that. For example, I work a lot and I'm always out. As well as that, when I eventually come home, I'm not very talkative. To continue our initial answer, I could add, I leave home early and get back quite late, so I hardly ever see any neighbors. We often comment on results or consequences. In relaxed, informal English, so is perfect. We could say that's why. In more formal situations, we could use in consequence or therefore. And as a result can be used in both. Moving on to the topic of news and giving examples. Let's talk about the news. Do you prefer to read the news online or in a newspaper? Well, to be honest, I just have some news app I look at on my phone, like the Financial Times. It's fantastic for studying English too. We often need to give examples in this speaking test, and to do that with like is fine. I know that a lot of people never use it in formal writing. They prefer, such as, for example, or for instance. And there is no problem using these expressions when we speak. Like is the most informal of them. To continue this answer and show contrast, I could say, I can't remember the last time I bought a newspaper, though it would be great to spend a few hours on a Sunday reading one. Look at the way we can contrast two opposing statements or ideas with though. It works the same way as but. Though, and even so are more common in spoken English, but can be used in both, and although or however are more formal. One thing I wanted to mention before we move on to part 2. I'm giving you quite a lot of words today, and when you're practicing, you should try to incorporate them into your answers so they come up naturally during the exam. And if you'd like to have a library of challenging IELTS speaking topics with sample answers and extra vocabulary, check out our IELTS speaking library, which covers over 40 topics from real exams. You may even be extra lucky, though this is definitely not guaranteed. I'll link it below. And now, on to part 2. Let's see how we use linkers in the 2-minute part 2 talk. When we're speaking like this without stopping for a couple of minutes, it's important to keep the listener, the examiner, informed by using linking words to show what's coming next. Okay, this is our part 2 topic. Describe someone you know who has interesting ideas or opinions, and 4 bullet points. And let's say we're talking about someone and we're getting to the point of giving some examples. Here it goes. Take films, for example. I remember one time a group of us were discussing that Korean film that won the Oscar, Parasite. Most of us thought it was simply about a poor family taking advantage of a rich one. She, on the other hand, explained that the film was a much more complex analysis of social issues, such as poverty, social mobility, and oppression in modern society. This extract begins by saying that an example is coming next. Take films, for example. And this is a very typical way to introduce an example. As an alternative, we could say, look at films, for instance. Next, we see on the other hand. We've already discussed some ways to express difference using but, though, or even though. In this context, on the other hand, sounds perfect because we can slow down a little when we say it. She, on the other hand. And that helps us tell the listener that something important is coming next. And we also have the examples introduced with more formal, such as. In this part 2 talk, we're discussing a more serious subject than in our part 1 answers. So we can use a bit more formal expressions. And that's good because we must show the examiner that we know more than one way to say something. Variety is important. The next part of the part 2 extract goes like this. The point is that she's brilliant at seeing things from different angles, and that's why she's so interesting. Sometimes she has very strong opinions, it's true. Even so, she's also extremely charismatic. I mean, everybody enjoys listening to her. In speaking and in writing, we often need to switch between giving specific examples to making generalizations or summing up things. After the example about the film, we come to some general comments about the person described. And it starts with a great way to tell the examiner that we are going to sum up, to go over the most important aspects. The point is that, in very informal English, we could say, the thing is that. There are other expressions we could use. For example, the fact is that. In other words, or what I'm saying is that, what else? Well, look at the way we can show that something is a consequence or a result of something else. That's why she's so interesting. Remember our little table. That's why is a more informal version of therefore. Some students use very formal linkers in speaking, and sometimes there is a good place for them. But here it would be out of place. And the last linker, even so, to connect two statements that appear contradictory but both are true. She has strong opinions. Even so, she's very charismatic. In IELTS writing, we'd say, although she has very strong opinions, but here it would sound too formal. Moving on to part 3. Let's look at some possible follow-up questions to that part 2 topic. In part 3, it's still the examiner who's asking the questions and the test taker speaking most of the time. But if we can make part 3 sound a bit more conversational, it will be better for our final band score. When you hear a question and don't know what to say, you want to buy yourself a second or two to think. And the phrases that often pop into my mind, or maybe your mind too, are, that's a good question, or that's an interesting, difficult question. And former examiners I work with say that these are getting overused quite badly. I mean, no reason we shouldn't use them if we really mean them. But examiners will notice if you're just mechanically repeating a phrase. I think there are some better ways to interact with the examiner. I'm gonna take it question by question. The first one is, at what age do children start to have their own opinions? Oh, that's hard to say really. I guess that's when they are in their early teens, 13 or 14. It's the time when they start to have different tastes to their parents. Very often, we need time to think of what we're gonna say. And here we see a good alternative to the more common, that's a difficult question. Next. Do peers have more influence than family or even teachers? Well, to some extent, yes. If it's fashion, for example, or music we're talking about. On the other hand, teachers have way more. When we discuss any topic, sometimes we can agree or disagree entirely, 100%. But often it's something in the middle. That's when we can say, to some extent, yes. We could also say, up to a point, yes. Well, yes and no. Here's another question. In what ways are teachers more influential? In all kinds of ways. I mean, it's important to remember that in most societies in the world, teachers are greatly respected, so their views shape answering a question using the key word in the question is very common. Here, the key word is ways. In what ways? In all kind of ways. We could also say in many ways, in several ways. The next follow-up question is, but aren't all teenagers rebellious? Yes, I know what you mean. At the same time, I don't think that in any conversation we're making, we're trying to see things we have in common and things we see differently. By using I know what you mean, we're saying that we understand the other point of view. In this example, that's followed by an alternative point of view at the same time. So this is a polite way to disagree. Other possible phrases? I see your point, or that's one way to look at it. Let's talk about inventions and ideas. How do inventors or philosophers come up with new ideas? Oh, let me think for a moment. Well, I suppose inventors identify a problem that requires a solution. With this question, we see another way to buy a little time, a pause to think. It's not every day someone asks us a question about philosophers, so it's okay to think a bit. Now, take a look at this table of the connectors we've learned today. You can print screen it if you like. They can help us make our ideas as clear as possible. And if you have lots of options and use them flexibly, I'm sure you achieve a high PAN score. The next step would be to learn how to extend your answers so you have opportunities to use all the linkers you've learned today. And this video will be perfect for that. And don't forget to check out our IELTS speaking library. Thank you so much for watching me today. Good luck with your preparation and your exam. Bye!